In southeastern Arizona, nestled amongst the remote Chiricahua Mountains, lies a vast and rugged expanse of land known as the Chiricahua National Monument. This area is characterized by steep gullies, canyons, jagged rocks, and massive boulders balancing atop each other, creating a landscape that resembles the moonscape of some alien world. Despite its otherworldly appearance, the Chiricahua National Monument is part of a national park system. It holds a place on the National Register of Historic Places and is renowned for its natural beauty and unique rock formations. Visitors to this area can experience the wild and often lethal beauty of this land by hiking its scenic trails. However, the Chiricahua National Monument is also known for one of the most puzzling unsolved national park disappearances on record. The disappearance in question involves Paul Fugate, who at the time was a 41-year-old law enforcement ranger working for the National Park Service and stationed at the Chiricahua National Monument. Fugate was known for his enthusiasm as a ranger, his love for adventure, and his experience as a hiker. He was also highly knowledgeable of the region's terrain and geology. On January 13, 1980, a Sunday afternoon, Fugate told a seasonal staff member working with him at the Park Visitor Center that he was going to check the trail leading to a new 400-acre parcel of land acquired by the park called Fairway Ranch. After telling the staff member to close down without him if he wasn't back by 4:30 p.m., Paul Fugate, a seasoned park ranger, set out on the well-marked trail to the Fairway Ranch in his full ranger uniform and badge. It was supposed to be a quick hike, and Fugate didn't even bother to take his radio with him. He waved goodbye and casually walked out of sight. He then seemingly disappeared off the face of the earth. This would be the last confirmed time anyone would see him. When Fugate failed to return on time, a search was launched that involved tracking dogs, aircraft, and hundreds of law enforcement personnel from various agencies, including the National Park Service, the local sheriff's department, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Forest Service, and the Southern Arizona Search and Rescue Association. Family members and volunteers also joined in on the search, starting with the trail to Fairway Ranch, where no trace of Fugate could be found, despite the search expanding to cover 17 square miles of rough and rugged terrain. Law enforcement authorities became increasingly desperate to locate Fugate and posted a $5,000 reward, which quickly ballooned to $20,000. However, none of this produced any leads. The only clue that seemed promising was from a witness who, under hypnosis, claimed to have seen Fugate unconscious in a truck between two unidentified men. There was absolutely no corroborating evidence to support this, and the witness himself admitted he could have been mistaken. The vehicle was traveling very fast, and ultimately, this lead led nowhere. Although it was widely assumed that Fugate had met with foul play, there was no concrete evidence to support this theory also. As the search for Fugate continued, various theories circulated about his disappearance. The most popular theory suggested that Fugate had stumbled upon drug dealers in the area and was either kidnapped or murdered, but once again, there was no evidence to support this. Another theory suggested that Fugate may have been attacked by a wild animal or had suffered an injury from falling, but considering his experience as a ranger, it was considered unlikely. Another possible theory was that Fugate intentionally disappeared. One clue that supported this theory was his instruction to the visitor center staff to close the center if he had not returned by 4:30 p.m., suggesting that he knew he might not be back. However, Fugate's family has challenged the theory that he abandoned his post, as he had left all his money and belongings at his home, as well as an expensive car he had been restoring and his beloved camera equipment.
Paul and Dodie's longtime friend Barbara Elfbrand admits the mystery is often on her mind.
I don't have the belief that I did originally that it would be solved. All the good clues or breakthroughs have led to walls which they couldn't get through. I know that Paul didn't just leave on his own, and I would like to know what happened to him, and it would be closure. It would be peace.
Fugate's disappearance is still one of the most puzzling unsolved national parks vanishings on record. In 1986, the National Park Service officially declared Fugate deceased, despite having no conclusive evidence of his death. There have been criticisms of the authorities' handling of the case, including accusations that they did not take appropriate measures, such as extending the search area beyond the parkland, and that the FBI did not take the case seriously enough and tried to dismiss it. Despite the lack of evidence, rumors and theories about Fugate's disappearance have continued to circulate. Some have speculated that he stumbled upon drug dealers in the area and was killed or kidnapped, while others have suggested that he may have been attacked by a wild animal or intentionally disappeared. While there is no concrete evidence to support any of these theories, the mystery surrounding Fugate's disappearance has yet to be fully resolved. In June of 2018, the National Park Service made a surprising move by reopening the decades-old case of Paul Fugate's disappearance. This announcement was made suddenly and without explanation, but it came with a substantial increase in the reward for information, which now stands at $60,000. The National Park Service cited the discovery of new evidence as the reason for this decision, although no specifics were given. The sudden reopening of the case has raised questions and speculation about what this new evidence could be and whether it is significant enough to bring the case to a close. When the National Park Service was asked about the new evidence, they replied with, quote, "We have no new information and respectfully decline to interview at this time." The fact that Fugate's case was reopened after so many years is unusual, and it suggests that authorities have reason to believe that they may finally be able to solve this mystery. However, whether this means that they are close to finding Fugate or discovering what happened to him remains to be seen. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance are murky and riddled with theories, rumors, and speculation. The lack of evidence or leads has made it challenging for investigators to determine what really happened to Fugate. What makes this case particularly strange is that most National Park Service rangers who have gone missing have been found, or at least some trace of them have been discovered. However, in Fugate's case, there is no concrete evidence to indicate what might have happened to him. Despite the renewed interest in the effort to solve this case, it seems that the disappearance of Paul Fugate remained a baffling mystery, at least for the time being.
Patty, also known as Patricia Krieger, was a 65-year-old woman who went hiking with her boyfriend, Larry Presley, her dog, and 5 other individuals who were friends and family of Larry's. They were in the Sauk Mountain area of Washington State on October 2, 2010, to scatter Larry's parents' ashes at the top of the trail. While hiking back down, Patty became separated from the group and started walking down the wrong trail. Although the group called out to her, she did not respond and continued walking. The group did not follow her, assuming they would meet back up at the bottom of the trail. When the group reached the end of the hike, they realized that Patty had not yet arrived. They waited for an unknown period of time before deciding to head off. Some of the hikers went to a nearby gas station, while others went shopping. The group estimated that Patty was left alone for around 4 hours. When they returned to the park and realized that Patty had still not shown up, they immediately notified the authorities. Unfortunately, despite extensive search efforts by the authorities and volunteers, Patty was never found. Her disappearance remains a mystery. The group Patty was hiking with claimed to be her family, which initially left her actual family unaware of her disappearance. It wasn't until a week later when her employer contacted her son because she hadn't shown up for work that they learned Patty was missing. Her dog, Bear, was found 3 weeks later, several miles from where she was last seen. Although malnourished, the dog was alive, indicating that it had been on the mountain since Patty had gone missing. Despite being physically fit, Patty was not an experienced hiker and was not dressed appropriately for the cold weather. When she was reported missing, law enforcement brought in scent dogs to track her movements. The dogs led investigators down the trail to the parking lot, suggesting that something might have happened to her once she had returned there. However, after finding Bear, the investigators re-evaluated this theory. According to Patty's friends and family, Larry Presley was found with her keys and driver's license after she vanished. One of his friends was also in possession of her mobile phone. Additionally, when Patty's family went to her house, they found a suitcase filled with jewelry in the back of a truck. When they finally entered the home, which required obtaining a court order because Larry was still living there with his friends, they discovered that it had been completely ransacked and trashed. Patty's safe had been rifled through, and there was garbage all over the floor. Her safety deposit box had also been emptied. In addition to the other suspicious circumstances surrounding Patty's disappearance, Larry and his friends were reportedly seen driving her vehicles after she went missing. The circumstances surrounding how Larry and Patty met were also strange. Larry had a lengthy criminal record, and upon his release from prison, he appeared at Patty's doorstep claiming to be a friend of her late husband, Jason Graham. Larry told Patty that Jason had asked him to take care of her if anything happened to him. Jason was a real estate agent, and it's unclear how he and Larry could have become acquainted. Patty's family believes that Larry may have read Jason's obituary in the newspaper and targeted Patty for personal gain. At the time Larry and Patty met, she was doing quite well for herself, owning her own home and several vehicles. Shortly after Larry moved in with her, several of his friends also moved in. Patty's friends and family reported that their relationship was rocky, and several red flags appeared throughout their time together. For example, she once found drugs hidden behind a fake wall in her shed. She also discovered a gun in the saddlebag of Larry's motorcycle and found out that he was having affairs with other women. According to Patty's family, they believed she was too afraid to end her relationship with Larry, who reportedly refused to help search for his missing partner after she vanished. Despite a search effort that included the use of thermal cameras and a helicopter, no sign of Patty was ever found. Her family suspects Larry may have played a role in her disappearance. In 2013, Larry was arrested and charged with federal weapons violations, and he received a 10-year prison sentence. However, he was released in 2018. Despite this, there has been no significant progress in the investigation into Patty's disappearance, which remains unsolved. The last sighting of Patty was in the Sauk Mountain area of Washington State on October 2, 2010, wearing a long-sleeve white top under a blue short-sleeve top, a black sweatshirt, and blue jeans. The disappearance of Patty Haskell in 2010 remains a mystery to this day, despite extensive search efforts and ongoing investigation. Her family suspects foul play, particularly involving her boyfriend at the time, Larry Presley, who had a criminal history and a suspicious relationship with Patty. Despite his refusal to help search for Patty and numerous red flags in their relationship, Larry was not charged in connection to her disappearance. Instead, he was later arrested on unrelated federal weapons charges and served time behind bars. Patty's family continues to hold out hope for answers, and her case serves as a reminder of the importance of staying vigilant and cautious in relationships, particularly with those who may have questionable pasts.
The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, located in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, holds the distinction of being the most visited national park in the United States. Within this vast expanse of natural beauty lies the picturesque Cades Cove, a popular destination for both locals and tourists alike. Visitors often flock to the area to take in the breathtaking 11-mile loop road, which winds through the lush foliage and offers glimpses of the park's diverse wildlife. Along the way, travelers can also discover historic structures and snap photos of the stunning seasonal scenery, especially in the fall and spring. For those looking to extend their stay, the Cades Cove Campground offers the perfect retreat, complete with numerous hiking and biking trails that allow visitors to truly immerse themselves in the unparalleled beauty of the park. Cades Cove is a popular destination in the Smoky Mountains, attracting visitors who are interested in catching a glimpse of the area's diverse wildlife. Whether you prefer to drive through or camp in the area, Cades Cove offers ample opportunities to observe a variety of creatures. While deer and black bears are commonly sighted, visitors may also encounter coyotes, groundhogs, turkeys, raccoons and other fascinating species. For many families, including the Martin family from Knoxville, Tennessee, Cades Cove holds a special place in their hearts. For generations, the Martins have made an annual Father's Day weekend pilgrimage to the Smokies, specifically to camp and hike in Cades Cove. Their love for this beautiful area and the many unique experiences it offers continues to draw them back year after year. William Martin, along with his two sons, Douglas aged 9, and Dennis aged 6, embarked on a Father's Day weekend adventure on June 13, 1969. Accompanying them on the trip was William's father, Clyde. This was to be Dennis's first such adventure with his father, and the group planned to hike a 13-mile loop trail from Russell to Spence Field in Cades Cove. Both William and Clyde were experienced hikers, having taken this same route multiple times in the past. Douglas, who was only 9 years old, had also hiked the trail before, so he was familiar with the terrain. Although Dennis was only 6 years old, he had been on family hikes before and was able to keep up with the pace of the group. Their journey began in Cades Cove, where they set off on the trail that led them through Abrams Creek and past the junction of the Crib Gap Trail. As they continued on, they eventually arrived at Russell Field, where they were able to take in the breathtaking scenery and enjoy the wilderness. Upon reaching Russell Field on the evening of June 13th, the Martin family met up with Dr. Carter Martin, a family friend from Huntsville, Alabama, along with his two sons. It's important to note that despite sharing the same last name, there was no familial relation between the two Martin groups. The next morning, on June 14th, the group set out on a 90-minute hike along the Appalachian Trail towards Spence Field. This location was known for its stunning view of Mountain Laurel in full bloom during the month of June. Upon arriving at Spence Field, they were greeted by other members of the family who had also made the trek. After enjoying a late lunch, the Martin children, along with Dr. Martin's children, began to play together. During this time, Dennis's father, William, overheard a conversation between the boys as they huddled up and plotted a little scheme. They discussed the idea of running to the edge of the field, sneaking around, and carrying out a surprise attack to scare the adults. To make the plan more effective, they instructed Dennis to walk alone and stay away from them since he was wearing a bright red t-shirt that might spoil the surprise. William observed the boys joking and laughing together as they schemed their sneak attack. After lunch, 9-year-old Douglas Martin teamed up with Dr. Martin's sons and headed out in one direction, while 6-year-old Dennis headed off in another direction all alone, still wearing his bright red t-shirt. William Martin, Dennis's father, watched for a few minutes as his son walked away before turning his attention back to the rest of the group. A few minutes later, when the children jumped out to scare the grown-ups, no one immediately realized that Dennis wasn't with them. William had assumed that Dennis would catch up with the others and didn't worry too much at first. However, less than 5 minutes had passed before William realized that something was wrong. The family split up and began calling out for Dennis, but there was no answer. William began to feel a growing sense of panic as he and the others searched the area. Despite their efforts, they were unable to locate the little boy. Dennis's father, William Martin, was extremely worried as Dennis was a quiet child who always responded when someone called his name. In an attempt to locate his son, William decided to head in one direction while his father, Clyde, went in the opposite direction. William followed the nearby Appalachian Trail heading west, repeatedly calling out for Dennis as he walked. He covered a 1-mile stretch before turning around and heading back towards Russell Field. He then retraced his steps, hiking all the way back to Spence Field, thinking that Dennis might have gotten confused and followed the same path that they had taken earlier in the day. Despite his efforts, there was still no sign of Dennis. William eventually returned to Spence Field alone, feeling exhausted and defeated. This was 1969, a time when there were no cell phones or quick ways to call for help. Dennis's grandfather, Clyde, realized that they needed assistance and decided to hike to the nearest ranger station at Cades Cove, which was approximately 9 miles away. It took Clyde several hours to reach the ranger station, and by the time he got there, it was already 8:30 p.m. He reported Dennis missing to the Rangers, who immediately launched a search and rescue operation. Just as the search for Dennis began, a storm rolled in, further complicating the already challenging task of finding the young boy. The area where Dennis was last seen was known for its complex terrain and potentially dangerous wildlife, and with the added obstacle of heavy rain, the situation became even more daunting. Despite the challenges, a few rangers immediately began searching the immediate area around Spence Field where Dennis had last been seen. They notified dispatch that they planned to search through the night in the hope of finding the missing boy. In 1969, there was no established large-scale search and rescue operation plan in place for the Smoky Mountains National Park. Chief Ranger Sneddon organized a search crew that set up a headquarters camp in Spence Field, where they could plan their efforts to find Dennis. The search crew would begin their search early on the morning of June 15th, hoping to make progress in their quest to find the missing boy. Initially, the search crew for Dennis Martin consisted of 30 men with 5 leaders and 10 additional crews of 2 to 4 men. However, as the search continued, more volunteers arrived on site to join in the effort. By 1 p.m. on June 15th, the search party had grown to 240 people, but there was no clear leadership or coordination among them. As the days went by, more and more people joined in the search for Dennis, including Boy Scouts and rescue squads from the North Carolina side of the Smokies who brought in jeeps, trucks, and helicopters to aid in the search efforts. Eventually, more than 1,400 people would take part in the search. However, the large number of search teams and volunteers may have actually hindered the search. There was no established search and rescue operation plan for the park at the time, and the search lacked a clear chain of command. As a result, searchers were likely destroying evidence or any clues that could lead them to Dennis Martin. Despite the growing number of people involved in the search, Dennis remained missing. As the search for Dennis Martin continued, many different ideas and theories were put forward about what could have happened to him. Some of these came from psychics and fortune tellers who had contacted the authorities offering to help. One psychic from Los Angeles claimed to have seen the boy 2.5 miles to the left of where he had last been seen by his father or brother. According to this psychic, Dennis had fallen off a steep area and was now stuck in the bushes, but still alive. Another psychic from New Orleans suggested that the search should stop looking on the ground and start looking up in the trees and treetops to find Dennis. These were just a couple of examples of dozens of calls that the search team received from psychics who claimed they had information that could lead to Dennis. Despite the search leaders following up on every call, they all turned out to be dead ends. After a week of unsuccessful searching, the FBI was called in to investigate whether there was any indication of foul play or a potential kidnapping. The FBI will get involved in a missing persons case if there is a suspicion of a crime. FBI agent Jim Ride was assigned to look into the background of the Martin family to see if anyone could have had a motive to harm or abduct young Dennis. After thorough investigation, the FBI found no evidence of any enemies or suspicious individuals connected to the Martins. The lack of any solid leads prompted the FBI and the Martins to refocus their search efforts back in the Smoky Mountains. The Martin family cooperated with the authorities and tried to recall every detail they could remember from the time they arrived at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park until the last moment when William saw Dennis walking away from the group. They recounted everything that had happened during the initial search for Dennis, in the hours before Clyde Martin reached the ranger station. Dennis went missing around 4 p.m. and it took Clyde until 8:30 p.m. to get to the ranger station, which gave them a 4.5-hour window. The family searched the immediate area and enlisted the help of anyone around Spence Field who offered to assist in finding Dennis. The family went through each detail again with the FBI when they arrived to investigate whether Dennis's disappearance was a kidnapping. The FBI interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances but didn't find any enemies or people connected to the family who seemed suspicious enough to investigate further. So, they went back to the Smokies to continue the search for Dennis. The Martins raised some red flags and alerted authorities to investigate potential leads. One such lead was an unnamed man from Dandridge, Tennessee, who had been camping at Spence Field around the time of Dennis's disappearance. William Martin, Dennis's father, reported to park rangers that this man, referred to as Mr. Cooper, seemed to stick close to William during most of the search efforts. Adding to the mysterious circumstances was the emergence of an unknown woman who claimed to possess extrasensory perception. She reached out to the police department and requested to speak with Dennis's mother. After speaking with the woman, Mrs. Martin was instructed to be wary of Mr. Cooper from Dandridge. Concerned that the woman and Mr. Cooper may be working together to abduct Dennis, Mrs. Martin brought up the possibility to the police. Despite the potential lead, there is no public record indicating that authorities found the situation suspicious enough to launch a further investigation. Nevertheless, the Martins noted these strange occurrences and felt that they warranted attention. As the search for their missing son, Dennis, continued, the Martins grew increasingly desperate for any explanation that could offer hope for his safe return. They considered every possible scenario that could have led to Dennis's disappearance, including the idea that someone may have confused their family with another, but there is no publicly available evidence to suggest that this theory held any weight. Contained within the files that are public and related to the investigation into Dennis's disappearance are several intriguing leads and witness statements, among which is the account of a man named Harold Key. From Carthage, Tennessee, Harold and his family were present in the park on the day Dennis went missing. Specifically, they were in the C Branch area, located roughly 7 miles from Spence Field and near Rowan's Creek. According to Key, he heard a disturbing scream that afternoon, which prompted him and his wife to scan their surroundings, fearing that one of their children may be under attack by a bear. Shortly thereafter, Key spotted a suspicious-looking man moving swiftly through the nearby woods. Key recalls that the man appeared to be intentionally avoiding them, and he described the man as rough in appearance. Several days after Harold Key and his family were in the park, they returned home and learned of Dennis Martin's disappearance through news reports. Key immediately reported his account of the sickening scream and the rough-looking man he saw to park officials. However, after investigating the matter, park officials determined that Rowan's Creek was too far from Spence Field for the incidents to be related. Unfortunately, the available information on the investigation into Dennis's disappearance ends there. Although the FBI continued to collaborate with park officials throughout the search, the contents of their report remain a mystery. This lack of transparency has frustrated many who have attempted to obtain the official report through Freedom of Information requests. The search for Dennis continued for 7 agonizing days, and on June 20th, which was also Dennis's 7th birthday, park ranger records show plans were made for how to proceed if he was not found alive. The following day, with over 1,400 volunteers participating in the search, concerns arose that uncoordinated efforts could be doing more harm than good. As a result, park officials requested that volunteers stop joining the search, which had by that point covered over 56 square miles. As the search for Dennis Martin stretched on, the costs continued to pile up. Despite the massive effort from volunteers and law enforcement, the hope of finding Dennis alive began to dwindle. On Wednesday, June 25th, park officials announced that the search for Dennis would be coming to an end soon. For the Martin family, the news was devastating. After almost 2 weeks of camping out and searching tirelessly for their son, they had to pack up and head back to Knoxville with heavy hearts. The uncertainty surrounding Dennis's disappearance and the lack of answers only added to their anguish. As the search for Dennis Martin dragged on without any solid leads, the National Park Rangers made the difficult decision to suspend all major search operations on Sunday, June 29th. Despite their best efforts, they had come up empty-handed and the FBI had found no evidence to support theories of Dennis being kidnapped. In the weeks that followed, the Martin family continued to hold out hope for any information that could lead to their son's safe return. They raised a reward of $5,000, equivalent to about $40,000 today, for anyone who could provide credible information about Dennis's whereabouts. However, as time passed and the search efforts turned up nothing new, the park officials had to make the tough call to officially close the search for Dennis Martin on September 11, 1969. The Martin family was left with no answers and the haunting memory of their son's disappearance in the Great Smoky Mountains. The disappearance of Dennis Martin has remained a mystery for over half a century, with no definitive answers as to what happened to the young boy. Various theories have been put forward, including the possibility that he became lost in the rugged terrain and perished due to the elements or being attacked by wildlife. Over the years, there have been several tips and leads that have emerged. One notable tip came in 1985 when a group of illegal ginseng hunters stumbled upon what appeared to be the remains of a small boy in an area about 3 miles from Spence Field, where Dennis was last seen alive. The hunters found a skull and other remains, but fearing arrest, almost 2 decades passed before one of the men called in the tip. When a search team finally looked for the remains, they came up empty-handed, as too much time had passed. According to a report by park officials, the search for Dennis was a marked failure. Despite the presence of many people on the scene, any possible evidence that could have been preserved was likely trampled upon by the numerous individuals who came to offer their assistance. The failure to properly coordinate and organize the search for Dennis Martin prompted the National Park Service to completely overhaul their search and rescue operations across all national parks. As a result of these changes, agencies all over the United States and the world have also adopted these new protocols, which have ultimately resulted in saving lives. Despite the positive outcomes of these changes, it is heart-wrenching to know that they came too late to rescue Dennis Martin. His disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, and his tragic case has served as a catalyst for reforming search and rescue procedures across the country.